Hi, I'm Mark Dresner, and this is FEI TV, bringing you the latest in innovation thinking. Joining us today is Alec Bernstein. He is the Senior Director of Research Strategy and Strategic Partnering for BMW Designworks USA. Alec, thank you for joining us today.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you. Let's get started by giving us a little bit about your current role and responsibilities, if you would.
Yes. My position is senior management, and I'm responsible for research group, strategy for the company, as well as strategic partnering, which is our name for business development and marketing. We believe our clients are our partners, and that's why we use that term to emphasize partnership, mutual value.
Just so people understand, where do you fit into BMW? Where does Designworks fit in?
Yes. We are a standalone, 100% owned by BMW Group daughter company, creative consulting, design consulting. Half our work is for BMW Group, BMW Rolls-Royce Mini motorcycle, and the other half is for Fortune 100 clients, HP, John Deere, etc.
Great, great. And creative management, when we spoke prior to the interview, creative management was an issue that you've devoted a lot of passion and thought and time to. Can you elaborate on the topic for us?
I will do my best with my right brain, which is, I think, the place to start. I've been involved in creativity or idea management for my whole career, and it's not so easy to fit into a lot of normal business structure. There are a lot of unknown areas and unknown results, and I think creating new ideas, new products, new designs, we always do it, but we don't know what the outcome will be until a project is almost over. Therefore, a lot of the issues in the management side are how to understand explaining it to business, making it valuable to business, and making sure that the interactions work correctly on a business level.
Are those tough cases to make, based on your experience, if I asked you to generalize really broadly?
It's actually very hard to generalize because design firms have been around for a long time, so there's clear value. So in general, yes, we do okay, and it's not as complicated. When we get into how we do it or why we do some of the things we do, it's still very complicated to explain it and for people to understand it, I think.
Yeah, I'm not surprised by that. You mentioned when we spoke earlier that the recession has sparked, and I'm going to quote you directly, a new risk understanding. What does this mean, and how well do you think that companies are responding to this new sensibility?
Yeah, it's a very interesting time, I think. I start with the general human psychology that if things are going well and everyone is comfortable, there is no reason to change. Inherently, if you do something new, it has more risk than repeating something you've done before. So we're in a place where, due to the recession and the economic changes, I think a lot of that is the value shifts hitting us in the consumers. The old ways are not working. That means we must try new ways. Therefore, there must be more risk than there was. And I think companies, even internally, most of our clients are struggling with how much change and how much new risk do they have to take to be able to excel and exceed in the next 4 or 5 years.
I imagine there's an actuarial component to trying to understand, just how much risk how far we're willing to go. Has your experience been thus far that companies are relatively, let me put this to you a different way. How well do you think companies are handling the notion of taking increased risk in their businesses?
Yeah. I think this year and last year, companies are starting to respond quite well. Everyone knows there has to be new risk, so the first issue to solve after '08 was really how do you control that risk? We all need new products, we need different stance on sustainability. The market has changed, so you have to take more risk. The question is, how much can you afford, and what are new metrics for the return on that? Because the return equations, I think, have changed quite a bit. So companies have to act differently, and most of our clients are.
So when you talk about the return equation, can you give me some sort of give us an example of that kind of thinking?
Sure. I think, and it's a complex issue in consumer products particularly, if you make a more profitable product that lasts longer, maybe is more premium, it's much better sustainability, and you can have a much better triple bottom line. Company makes more money, everybody is positively affected by this.
Right.
It's a very different model than selling more and pushing onto shelf and revising and upgrading every 6 months. And that's a different business model.
So that investment in quality itself, from the consumer standpoint, would seem to fit BMW very nicely. When you talk about BMW, we talk about BMW Designworks USA. I want to clarify for everyone that you're working globally.
Yes.
Many of the issues that we've been discussing are indeed, not restricted to the U.S. or to the U.K. or to Western Europe, but very significant global issues.
Absolutely. We have Designworks itself has 3 offices. Actually, we're just opening a 4th in Shanghai about 2 weeks ago. We're in Singapore, we're in Europe, in Munich, and we're based in Los Angeles. But our client base, I think we're in about 15 or 20 countries. A lot of Brazilian clients, a lot of Asian clients going into Western markets, a lot of Western European companies going into the US market or into an Asian market. So a great deal of our work is about how to learn and enter new markets through design or creative problem solving.
Let me ask you a question. What's the difference between taxonomy and process?
It's a great question, one of my favorites. I think in efficiency, I've looked quite a bit at language as well as studying process and working out, business process, creative process in the value chain. And what I found is taxonomy, which is the syntax or naming conventions around a language, like scientific method or the evolutionary tree has its own language. And we've seen a lot of companies spend a great deal of time not really doing process work, but taxonomy work. Not what are the activities in time that you need to do, but what do you call it? And I think a lot of time could be saved if people would understand, get common language much earlier and not worry so much about the language itself and the names of the innovation steps, but do the innovation steps.
And to what extent do you think that taxonomy work, if you will, or the amount of time that people are spending naming is impacting the effectiveness of process itself? From a relationship standpoint.
I think if it's controlled at the beginnings as an exercise to make sure people understand the terms they're using, it's extremely valuable. But then to me, it delays. It delays the beginning of a process, and it has a lot of argumentation and a lot of differences of opinion. We all do a lot of iteration. We've heard it, this whole conference is filled with often regularly repeat, fail, test, repeat, fail, test. And those are the kinds of things that you need to be doing and not worry about how you call those.
Do you think that I'm going to ask you to generalize here, in the business world, that people are able to distinguish between actually doing a process, being engaged in the execution stage versus that taxonomy stage?
I don't think so. In general, no, I think that's not limited to business either. I think a lot of activities in research technology also have the same issues. A lot of time spent there without really understanding what the difference is.
And certainly at the government level as well, which goes without saying, but we won't go there. How many of the ideas that you and your clients develop go to production, and why do you think that you've been able to achieve the rate that you've achieved?
The actual rates change. My goal is 10% of raw ideas would make it into production, And this is a goal that I've set for myself from previously being more in the research world, where it was about 1 in 100 products, about 1% would make it. In a fast-moving technical world, the ratio is not worth generating those other 99 ideas. So a lot of what I've done is to try and reduce it, and our teams work to get 8 or 10 good ideas, and one of them should fit all of the criteria so that it can make it into production.
And that 10%, relatively speaking, is pretty high.
It's extremely
rate.
good.
Yeah.
It's extremely good.
Yeah. Talk to us about the advantages of a multidisciplinary background when you're innovating. This is an area that you're passionate about and feel very strongly about. Why is this not rewarded in conventional business circles, and how do you think we might change that?
Well, I am a multidiscipline person for my whole career, and so I have a lot of empirical opinions on this. I think it starts with the fact that the reward system is still based significantly in columns. There is no Nobel Prize for a multidiscipline person. There is no chair at a university yet for a multidiscipline person. It's always expert-based. As the world's gotten more complex, we can no longer survive on single experts working alone. So the big shift that's happening now, I think, is to learn how to get many disciplines at the table working in parallel, sharing ideas easily, and the system, all systems are really behind in how you would organize this.
Is there something to a predisposition or an aptitude or something that is germane to the type of person who might, over the course of time, acquire a multidisciplinary background and degree of experience and expertise that is different from the person who has been in one discipline their entire life?
I think very much so, and I don't know the psychological actual roots of these, but we tend to try and identify that because a multidiscipline person is very interested in the content that they know. They can extract the principles of how they work and apply it to another area, and that's an exciting factor for those people. And those are the people that tend to be able to recognize someone else's expertise and say, ooh, I really need this technical thing. I don't know anything about it. I want the best expert that I can get so I can learn about it, but really have them work with me for a joint solution. It's a different personality and a different interest. I think a different reward, personal reward and satisfaction in the way that they work.
Why do you think that there isn't more emphasis on becoming more, on gaining a more multidisciplinary background and experience?
I think it is growing, absolutely, and I think the issues are pretty standard human being issues of hierarchy. Which hierarchy is the manager or in charge or responsible for people that know more than that person would in a different discipline? So how you do this could often mean consensus management, which is not easy, and we have not really learned how to make consensus management fast. Hierarchy we can make very fast. So there are some new things that have to be learned on balancing consensus and how do you organize those people into a new kind of a relationship.
Is this an area that you've been exploring and tinkering with?
Absolutely.
Management?
Absolutely.
How, I don't want to say how successful, what's your experience been as you've been, embarking on that path?
Yeah, there are two outcomes. If the core of the people involved are the right kind of open people, it's the most efficient and effective work I've ever done. And if those people cannot psychologically cooperate in some way, it goes almost nowhere. So it's really very binary. It either works very well or it does not work very well.
And finding, being able to quickly determine whether or not it's going to be able to predict it, I imagine up front, has got to be the Holy Grail there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Any final thoughts about the future of innovation, Alex? Alec. Excuse me. Any final thoughts about the future of innovation, Alec?
I think we're looking into a very different future, and to me, innovation has some really new challenges. The period in which technology features are the driver, I think, is ending, and we're looking really at new value shifts, and that's a bigger change in consumer world than we've had in quite a long time. So to me, innovation needs to really ramp itself up for understanding consumers, new markets, and those are different than finding new technical advantages, although we have to continue in all of that. There's going to be a lot of change, so innovation should be very challenged and hopefully very successful to be part of that change.
Yeah, and certainly an area that will become increasingly important to people on a variety of levels, process, right down
Yes.
to the delivery of that process and what is
Absolutely.
being delivered.
Absolutely.
Yeah, great. Well, on that note, I want to thank you very much for your time today.
Oh, it's
You've
a
given us
pleasure.
lot to chew on. And we'll conclude this episode of FEI TV. This is Mark Dresner with Alec Bernstein of BMW Designworks USA. Thanking you for joining us today, and stay tuned for our next episode of FEI TV.